Welcome to the 28th edition of the Miami Jewish Film Festival, the largest Jewish film festival in the world. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, SAGE, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all of these years. My name is Rabbi Efrat Zarin Zohar, and I'm the executive director of SAGE. And I'm excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with filmmakers Carol Stein and Susan Wittenberg from the movie Brighton Beach, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And so my first question to you is, tell everyone, what is this time period in the documentary that is reflected through your film?
Well, we started filming right out of college. We had studied street photography and films, that were shot in the street and were raring to go. And so we started filming in 1976, and like most independent filmmakers at that time, didn't have full funding. So it was a period of 1976 to 1980. And at that time, the beginning of it, it was almost purely a Jewish community of older Jewish people. But right in the middle of it, the Russians started being allowed into this country. So we witnessed the change over that 4-year period in a very interesting way of new people coming in. And
they were Jews as well.
Pardon?
They were Jews as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then there was also a big Puerto Rican community that lived in Brighton Beach. So it was kind of this mixture of different ethnicities that attracted us to it. Also, the beauty of it, the city by the sea, the boardwalk, the romance of it, and sort of fulfilling our education of street photography. It was all one big package.
One other thing I think is that what we were aware of is how much things were changing right at that moment. And I had gone to Brighton Beach Baths, which was a big club, city club, with my grandparents on both sides of my family. And it was magic to me. And so part of what drew me back to this area to photograph and film after college was trying to preserve this memory or hang on to it in some ways. And we didn't realize at first how fast it was going to change. And the influx of the Russians, as Carol said, was transformative. The good fortune for us in being there at that time was that we captured this moment of change. And if the Russians hadn't come at that time, it just probably would have become merged with Coney Island in a sense, because it shared the boardwalk, and it just would have been another poor neighborhood like Rockaway, that was sort of at the end of a subway line and deteriorating. But that didn't happen. It went in another direction. And it got us thinking about preserving things. I mean, we were not anthropologists. We didn't do ethnographic films. Ethnographic films usually meant you went to somewhere, in a remote location that was going to vanish. But in a way, with hindsight, we realized that's what we did right here in Brooklyn, and that we came in at a moment when things were changing. And if we hadn't come, you couldn't see the change. And as filmmakers, that had a really big impact. And it's something that we're still dealing with very much today.
Very nice. So the footage was footage that both of you took, or where else did you get the footage?
Well, some of the archival stuff from the 30s and the 40s, obviously we acquired, but all the footage was shot either by me or Susan. We had a couple of friends who did a little bit of the shooting, but the shooting itself was very important to us. As Susan is an incredible still photographer as well, which I'm not that great, but we would go. I mean, we both had full-time jobs. Friday afternoon, get my paycheck, go buy some film. A friend of us loaned his camera to us, for 4 years. And we get on the subway with our camera and our Nagra, and we'd go out and we just shoot.
The big sync sound scenes those are when we really had a crew. And that's what the bigger grants that we got enabled us to do. So that those that are kind of anchors in the structure were when we had a lot of other people with us. And we did things like rented a cherry picker and went out to Brighton Beach to watch the sunrise on the boardwalk. You know, we were able to do some of those things. And also because it was so easy to get access. I mean, we just went to the rooftops of buildings and filmed. You never could get into these places as easily now. And you know, when Carol was saying it was just us with the camera, one thing people ask us all the time now, because remember, obviously, this is way pre-cell phones. So everyone who is out, whether they're sitting on the boardwalk, whether they're playing the games on the beach, they're all connecting with each other. Nobody is disconnected and looking at their phones. And so it's so different how they engage. And we stood out with a camera, where now you don't. Everybody has a camera. But we learned to be invisible, it kind of just by standing still in a way. And so the streets were so different then.
Mm. And tell us a little bit about why and how you focused on Lorraine Colon, I believe her name was, and her family and that story a bit.
You know, it's been a while, so I don't even exactly remember how we connected with them, but we just thought it was such a, you know, the kind of, you know, the harsher side of life in Brighton Beach. I mean, they were obviously very poor, and Lorraine is a great storyteller, you know, and they were very comfortable with us. And so I think we did one interview, and then it was interesting enough for us to go back a few times. And so they just shared everything with us. And, you know, their story is still fascinating and sad and funny and, you know, reflective of what we were trying to accomplish with the film in terms of, you know, the Russians come in here and, you know, they think they own everything. And, you know, that kind of, even though there was tension ethnically, they all really sort of coexisted rather, you know, well. You know, there wasn't like the hatred and the vitriol that we're sort of experiencing now.
One thing I remember about Lorraine is that when we were filming in the winter and it was freezing, we were walking around and she worked in that thrift shop, which is where you saw her in the beginning. And my memory is basically walking in there because we were freezing, and she just started chatting with us. And at that time, they lived in an apartment, as she said, right up there. And sort of one thing led to another. But I think that in any documentary, it's just this sort of serendipity, really, of finding characters that it's like when people do screen tests for feature films, it's like you just don't know which person who's comfortable talking to you, sitting next to you in the coffee shop, is going to be even more amazing on film. Most are not. That's why they're not actors, you know. But every now and then you hit it with these people like Lorraine, who just really come alive and feel like it was an opportunity for her. It gave her dignity, it gave her empowerment, and she shared her life, and she felt that was important. And you know, we were fortunate to have her. And
Oh,
I always
nice.
wish we could find them, but you know, I wish someone would come up to us and say, "Oh, we remember them." But you know, if you're looking for Pedro Colon, you know, you're just not going to find that person easily in New York City.
Right. And how do you feel that this movie speaks to our times today? Is there any connection or through line that you see from the past to the present?
Very, very much so. And, you know, we've had some wonderful screenings in New York at the Brooklyn Academy of Music and Anthology Film Archives, and they were all sold out, which was a surprise. It went for a week at Anthology and it was completely sold out. And the audience was mostly young people, not people who had nostalgia about, you know, being there in the late 70s, early 80s, or whose family was there, but people who, a lot of Brooklynites, of course, because Brooklyn is so hip these days, wanted to see Brooklyn back then. So it resonates with them, I think, because of these themes that we were just discussing of, you know, different ethnic groups, jockeying for space, jockeying for whose place this is and who is changing it and who's making it worse or who's making it better. And you know, it's so many, I mean, in an unfortunate way, so much of what's going on now is kind of the extreme version of what was going on then, which I guess is just a reflection of human nature and human beings.
I mean, one thing I feel is that we didn't intend to make a deeply feminist film when we made the film. It wasn't like, it was a period of time of either very political documentaries or women's films where you told your personal story and put yourself in it. I could have put myself in it. I could have said, this was my grandmother's locker in Brighton Beach Baths. I remember the smell of Bain Soleil or whatever they used. But we actually, and people have said this, is that we gave women a voice in this film. And we didn't decide to do that, but it was us, and we gravitated towards these people. We connected with them. And so I think that makes it stand out in a way of other documentaries from this moment in time. And also our backgrounds in colleges were as much foreign films. I mean, we worshipped Fellini as much as we worshipped Helen Levitt. And so we weren't in a category then. This was a very filmic, film style documentary. I mean, either you were gritty, you were personal, people were getting shot, and we didn't fit into that at all. Like, if you stand on the boardwalk today, any day or month of the year, you're in a dreamscape. And we wanted to make that dreamscape come alive, as well as have these people tell their stories. And I think that holds up. That's why people are just captivated when they see it today.
And it's not only a feminist film, but I think it's just a very feminine film. It's a feminine point of view, and the themes are feminine, the people are. So that's just because of who we were. We weren't even realizing it at the time. It's just what we were attracted to.
That's super. That really does speak to the fact that, having diverse filmmakers making films really brings you so many different angles that wouldn't necessarily come into the world without that diversity. So I just want to conclude the interview by thanking you both, the filmmakers Carol Stein and Susan Wittenberg from the movie Brighton Beach, for joining us today. Once again, thank you to all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, SAGE, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout all these years. And thank you, our audience, for participating in the 28th edition, the Miami Jewish Film Festival.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled.
Thank you. And look for our next film. It fits right in with what your work is about. We'll tell you more. Bye.